Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
By the time you're finished listening to this Pepsi Zero Sugar, you'll be 15 seconds closer to kickoff. Stock up now. Bengals game day is so close, you can almost taste it. Bengals watching. Better with Pepsi.
I'm Carol from Sunbury, Ohio. I'm a Republican, but I don't care who does the job as long as the job gets done. That's why I like Sherrod Brown. He stood up to both parties on China and worked with Republicans to fight fentanyl because Sherrod fights for Ohio. That's leadership.
Paid for by friends of Sherrod Brown.
Welcome to the Two-Footed Podcast, your daily dive into the biggest stories and talking points from the world of football, with a particular focus on the Premier League. Before we get started, a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, Liberty Shield. Liberty Shield is a VPN provider, and one of the many benefits of their service is that you can change your IP address to unlock geo-restricted content. And for Premier League fans like us, that means you can catch all the action no matter where you are. So if you use the UK VPN, that means you get all live matches on Sky Sports, TNT Sport, Amazon Prime, and the highlights with Match of the Day on BBC iPlayer. Furthermore, you can switch your location to the USA to access all those matches you may otherwise miss using American streaming services like Peacock and USA Network. If you sign up now, you can get 25% off by using the code EPL25OFF. That's EPL25 off at checkout for 25% off. That's whether you choose their VPN router or the software app for your favorite devices. Liberty Shield have got you covered. Oh, and don't forget, after today's episode, be sure to check out our shorter bite-sized pod, the Two-Footed Extra. That will keep you up to speed with all the latest news and gossip. And be sure to check out the other shows that EPL Index offers. Today was hugely enjoyable, a tad predictable, previewing every Premier League round with a different guest each week, where he really does put them through the ringer. You come off that show, I've guested on that show, you come off it, and you feel like you've been interrogated. It's a really good listen, though. There's also our new show, our roundup show. It's called The Final Whistle. It's hosted by Nina Kauser and Ben Poscod, and they summarise all the matches and the big talking points. It comes out every Sunday evening, so make sure you listen. Now, let's dive in to today's biggest stories. Well, it's good, boys and girls. Two-Footed Podcast. Today is Thursday. It is October 31st. Happy Halloween to you all. Hope you're all well and having a pleasant day. EFL Cup action last night. Liverpool go to Brighton and win 3-2. Cody Gakpo just after half-time. Gakpo again just after the hour mark. Adingra pulls one back for Brighton, but then Luis Diaz immediately cancels that out, makes it 3-1. A late Tyreek Lamptey deflected shot snuck in to make it 3-2. I thought Liverpool were good value for the win overall, to be fair. Moving on, Preston 0, Arsenal 3. Gabriel Jesus on 24 minutes. Ethan Nwaneri on 33 minutes with a lovely left-footed goal bent into the top corner. And then Kai Havertz with a powerful header in the second half give Arsenal a comfortable win that they were good value for. They probably should have scored a couple more. Manchester United 5, Leicester City 2. Casemiro on 15 minutes. Great goal. Absolutely great goal. Garnacho on 28. Bruno Fernandes on 36. Casemiro on 39, following up his own miss. And Bruno Fernandes on 59, giving United their 5 goals. Khalil El Khanas and Connor Cody with first half goals for Leicester. But in truth, this game was never really close. United dominated from early, looked full of confidence, and probably should have scored a couple more. Newcastle 2, Chelsea 0. Isak scores on 23 after Chelsea give the ball away cheaply on the edge of their own box. And then the score is doubled on 26. It is a cross in from the left-hand side, flicked on at the near post. I don't really understand what happens from here. I don't understand how Disasi and Jorgensen make such a mess of this. If anyone can tell me, I'd love to know how exactly that goal comes about, because it is a mess between Disasi and Jorgensen, especially as Disasi should have been at right back, not out at left side centre back. Aston Villa 1, Crystal Palace 2. I did say if there was to be an upset, it might be Palace. Having won at the weekend, confidence raised, wanting to build momentum. They go to Villa Park. Ebery Chieze puts them one up on 8 minutes with a really good header. John Duran continues his great run of form. That's 8 goals this season already. Daichi Kamada on 64 with a low 20-yard strike gives them the win. Good value for that win as well. Tottenham 2, Manchester City 1. The only reason this wasn't 4 or 5 is that Tottenham missed big chance after big chance after big chance. Timo Werner put them ahead on 5 minutes. Matar Sarr scored an outstanding goal on 25 to make it 2. Matthias Nunes pulls one back just before half-time to get City back in the game. But by that point, Timo Werner had already missed a big chance. In the second half, Werner misses another big chance on a breakaway. Kulusevski misses a big chance on a breakaway. And then Richarlison gets handed a gift on a plate and makes a mess. Tottenham absolutely good value for their win. They just let City have the ball and then cook them on the counter-attack. And I think we might see more and more teams try this. I really do. City look really susceptible against pace. They really are struggling to defend pace at the moment. And Spurs took advantage. And again, I think they were good value for their win. So what that means is that we have quarterfinals made, scheduled. They will be the 17th of December. I imagine at least one gets flexed to the 16th of December. But the games are Tottenham versus Manchester United, Newcastle versus Brentford, Southampton versus Liverpool, and Arsenal versus Crystal Palace. On the face of it, you would be expecting Tottenham, Newcastle, Liverpool, and Arsenal to advance. Liverpool are the only team playing away in that round that you would predict to advance. But United could go to Spurs and pull off a win. Brentford could upset Newcastle. Depending on what team Arsenal put out, Crystal Palace could go there and win. And of course, there's always the chance that Southampton upset Liverpool. But for right now, I would be predicting Tottenham, Newcastle, Liverpool, and Arsenal as the Final Four, which is, I think, a very strong Final Four for the League Cup. The competition thus far this year has been quite good. I think there's been a lot of good games. There was good games in this round. Liverpool-Brighton was a good game. Villa-Crystal Palace was a good game. And Tottenham-City was a good game. The Arsenal game was not a particularly good game. It was a good performance from Arsenal, but it was one-sided. The gulf in quality was enormous. I haven't watched the entirety of Brentford-Sheffield Wednesday, so I have no idea. But obviously a bit of excitement there with the penalty shootout. And to be fair, Southampton versus Stoke was quite fun. So there we go. That's where we stand in the League Cup right now. 17th of December. 6 weeks break. 6 weeks break. Of course, 2 weeks of that is another needless international break that nobody wants, but that's going to be forced upon us. We have 2 more Premier League games before this nonsense is forced upon us. And if you're looking forward to it, well, God bless you, to be honest, because I'm certainly not. On the topic of cups, I wanted to stay with this. The first round proper of the FA Cup kicks off this weekend. So to run through the games, they start tomorrow night. Notts County against Alfrington Town, Tamworth against Huddersfield. Both of them 7:45 kickoffs. On Saturday, Tunbridge versus Harbour Town, Worthing versus Morecambe, Burton versus Scarborough, Solihull Moors against Maidstone United, Gillingham against Blackpool, Reading against Fleetwood Town, Newport County against Peterborough, Barrow against Doncaster, Woking against Cambridge United, Stockport against Forest Green Rovers, Bristol Rovers against Weston-super-Mare, Rochdale against Bromley, Walsall Bolton, Port Vale Barnsley, Exeter Barnet, Swindon Town Colchester, Wycombe Wanderers York City, Colchester Horsham, Southend United Charlton, Maidenhead Crawley Town, Brackley Town against Braintree Town, Phil Alexandra against Dagenham and Redbridge. That's a proper nostalgic one, like proper 90s nostalgia for me. Bradford City against Aldershot Town, Carlisle against Wigan Athletic, Tranmere against Oldham Athletic, Stevenage against Guiseley, Grimsby Town against Wheelstone, Salford City against Shrewsbury, Rotherham Cheltenham, Rushall Olympic against Accrington Stanley, Hednesford Town against Gainsborough Trinity, and that is the last 3 p.m. game. Then at 5:30, it is Northampton Town against Kettering Town. And then on Sunday, the 12:30 kickoff, the big one, the big FA Cup tie of the weekend is MK Dons, the AFC Wimbledon. That's 12:30. Also 12:30, Sutton United against Birmingham. 2 p.m, Curzon Ashton against Mansfield Town, Boreham Wood against Leyton Orient. And then 3:30, it is Harrogate Town against Wrexham. And then on Monday, it is Chesham United against Lincoln City. So, obviously, if you're a Premier League fan, there may not be a whole lot of interest there, but I do really fancy watching the Dons derby, MK Dons against AFC Wimbledon. So I think I will watch that one. As we're looking at it, obviously there are quite a lot of non-league teams in this competition. This is League One, League Two, and non-league teams who have qualified to this point. So we've got quite a few from the National League, and then we've got teams from the National League and National League South and National League North. Below that, though, we get Horsham, who play in the Isthmian League Premier Division, Gainsborough, who play in the same league, Hednesford Town, who are in the Northern Premier League Division 1 West, which is the 8th tier of English football. We have Guiseley, who are in the 7th tier. They play in the Northern Premier League, or Northern Premier League Premier Division, which is basically the Isthmian League for the North, I think. Harbour Town, they're in the Southern League. Kettering Town, also in the Southern League. And that is our lot. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams who play in the 7th or 8th tier, which is pretty cool. And 2 of them going head-to-head, Hednesford Town against Gainsborough Trinity, means at least one is guaranteed to go through to the second round of the competition and then give themselves the chance to play for a big draw, potentially a Premier League team. I love the FA Cup. I absolutely love the FA Cup. So these games take place between tomorrow night, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and then onwards over the next 7 months. The televised games on British terrestrial television, Tamworth against Huddersfield Town is the game tomorrow night. That is on BBC Two at 7:45. On Saturday, it's Northampton Town against Kettering. That's 5:30 on BBC Two. On Sunday, Sutton United against Birmingham City is on ITV1 at 12:30. Harrogate Town against Wrexham is on ITVX, which is their streaming service. That's 3:30. And then on Monday, 7:15, an unusual kickoff time, Chesham United against Lincoln City. Potential giant killing there, Tier 6 Chesham, Tier 3 Lincoln City. So plenty to sink your teeth into if the Cups are your bag. I'll be back after.
Now, two pigeons bemoaning the fact you can stream DirecTV satellite-free.
These humans can stream all the top-rated national news channels on DirecTV, and now with no satellite dish.
This just in. Weather, sports, election coverage. DirecTV has it all, but something is missing. The satellite dish.
What are you doing?
I'm reporting the news. Back to you, Bob.
Here's some news. You're a buffoon.
Stream the top-rated national news channels. No satellite dish. Visit DirecTV.com. Internet required. Top-rated news based on 2023 Nielsen ratings.
Hey, it's Austin James. If you're like me, trying to live your best life while living with diabetes, you can relate to worrying if you're doing a good job managing your diabetes. I use the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor to get real-time glucose readings and see the impact of every meal and activity to make better decisions. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor can help me live life with diabetes on my own terms, and it gives me more time for the things I love, like being a dad and a musician. Now this is progress. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
Add excitement to your holidays with Ohio Lottery Holiday Scratch-Offs, including $1 holiday cash and $5 holiday lucky times 10, or holiday bonus millions with a 200 times multiplier and a $2 million top prize. Plus, enjoy second chance drawings where you can win 10 times, 100 times, or 1,000 times the price of your ticket. Scratch-Offs make the perfect gift, and best of all, there's no wrapping required. Lottery players are subject to Ohio laws and commission regulations. Play responsibly.
Right, welcome back. So I think I only have one question this week. Let me just check Twitter to make sure nothing else has come in. Yeah, one question. That is absolutely fine, because this one will take a few minutes. It is from Tiberius Sports Ball, and he says, when you were talking about Arsenal playing defensively against Bournemouth, a team whose ceiling is 9th, it got me thinking, what do you think is every team's floor and ceiling? Basically a range for where each team might fall in the Premier League. So let's grab up the Premier League table. Actually, we'll just go alphabetically, because I prefer to do things alphabetically, because I'm weird like that. We will grab the list of teams here and start with Arsenal. So, the ceiling is winning the title. The floor is 5th. I think it's 5th. Now, for them to fall to 5th, realistically, the floor is 3rd. But there is a world in which they fall to 5th because their attack stutters. And maybe they continue to have some less than optimal luck with injuries. But let's say 1st and 4th split the difference. Aston Villa, I think the ceiling is 3rd. I think the floor is probably 8th. At the very worst, like, everything would have to go wrong for them and right for other teams. But I do think there's a world in which they could finish 8th. I just don't think it's particularly likely. Bournemouth, I think the ceiling is 9th. I do. I think the ceiling is 9th. The floor, I would say, is 16th. I would say that's their floor. Brentford. I think the ceiling is probably 11th, and the floor is probably 16th again. Brighton. I think their ceiling is quite high. Now, we're based only on this season. We're not talking about down the line. I think Brighton, as currently constructed, with the right moves over the next couple of windows, potentially a top 14. But for this season, I think their ceiling is 6. I think their floor is 12. I think the floor is 12. I'll explain some of the methodology when I get to the end. Next up then is Chelsea. The ceiling is 4th. The floor is 9th. Crystal Palace, I think the ceiling is 9th. I think the floor is probably 15th. I know at the moment they're 17th. They're not going to end up there. Everton, I think the ceiling is probably 11th. I think the floor is relegation. Probably an 18th. I don't think they'll get relegated this season, but there is a world in which they could. Fulham, the ceiling is 10th. The floor is probably about 60. Ipswich, the ceiling is 50. The floor is dead fucking last. DFL. Leicester, I would say the same as Ipswich. 15th or 15th is probably the highest I could see them. Yeah, 15th is probably the highest I could see them. But there's a real possibility that they go down. Liverpool, the ceiling is 1st. The floor is 4th. Realistically, the floor is 3rd, but there is a world in which they finish 4th. So I'll go with 4th, like Arsenal. Manchester City, the ceiling is obviously winning the title. The floor is 3rd. They're not going to finish outside the top 3. Manchester United, the floor is more interesting. The ceiling is 4. Everything went right for them. They could get 4. But it would also mean everything goes wrong for other teams, like Villa, for example. The floor, though, I think is probably about 12th, because there's quite a lot of variance in performance level among their squad. They're quite erratic. Now, if and when they appoint Amorim, I think that floor raises substantially. But for now, I'm going to say 12. Newcastle, the ceiling is 4. I think the floor is probably 9 for Newcastle. Southampton, I think the ceiling is 17, and the floor is DFL. Tottenham, I think the ceiling is 3rd. I think the floor is probably 8. West Ham, the ceiling is 8. The floor is probably about 40. And Wolves, I think the ceiling is probably 14th or 15th. And the floor is DFL. So, the way I look at the table, right? I think there's 3 teams that stand above the rest. City, Arsenal, Liverpool. Last season's top 3. Then I think there's a group of 5 teams that make up the next tier. Aston Villa, Chelsea, Tottenham, Newcastle, and Manchester United. And by the way, it's flown under the radar with a lot of people that Newcastle currently sit 12th in the league with a negative goal differential. Newcastle have not been good this season. And even in the games that they won, they were not good. But they're in that next group of 5, right? Villa, Chelsea, Spurs, Toon, United. That's the big 8. It's the big 6 with Villa and Newcastle. And Newcastle are in it because of the finance behind them. And Villa are in it because A, the finance behind them, and B, the performance level. And also, the historical size of both clubs warrants inclusion. So I think we have now a big 8 in the Premier League. But I think there's 3 that have separated themselves from the rest. Beneath that, then, the next group of teams, I would say you've got Brighton, you've got West Ham, and I would say those 2 are slightly above, and in Brighton's case have a much higher ceiling than the others that I would put in their same tier, which would be Brentford, Fulham, Bournemouth, and Crystal Palace. So that's 7 teams in that group. Brighton, West Ham, Brentford, Fulham, Bournemouth, Crystal Palace. So that's 6 teams. Sorry, that is 6 teams. I think I missed Forest as I went down. I did, didn't I? Anyway, well, Forest, I would say, are in this next group, which is Forest, Everton, Leicester, Ipswich, Wolves, and Southampton. Now, Forest, so far this season, are showing themselves trending towards the group above, which is why I said 7. Forest look much more aligned with your Brightons, your Brentfords, your Fulhams, your Bournemouths. Palace, though, have trended the other way, towards your Ipswiches, your Wolves, your Evertons, your Leicesters, and your Southamptons. The ceiling, I would say, for Forest, I would say, is 10th. 9th or 10th. And the floor is probably 16th. Probably 16th. So, when I look at this, I look at a Brighton. Let's take them as an example, because I think they're the best of the next group. So we've got tier 1, which is our big 8. Then you've got a middle 7, middle 6, let's say, middle 6, and then the bottom 6. Of the middle 6. So we're going to include Forest in that bottom 6, because over the last couple of years, that's where they've been. Of that middle 6, I think Brighton have the highest ceiling. I think they have the best squad. I think they're the best run club. And when we look at the talent in that team, it's very easy to see them winning a lot of football matches. So I think you could see a world in which things go really well for them and then badly for a couple of the big teams above them, which could be Newcastle, Chelsea, Tottenham, and United. I think they're the ones with the most likelihood of dropping and Brighton elevating above them. They don't need all those teams to drop below them. They only need 3. And I think they could easily finish like at the moment, they sit 6th in the table. They're 4 points clear of Toon, 5 points clear of United. They're 3 points ahead of Tottenham. So at the moment, they're ahead of all of those. Now, there will come a point in the season where Herzliya, as a young manager, a new manager in this league, has a rough patch. And we'll see how other teams respond and whether they can take advantage of that, whether Brighton have built up a bit of a firewall of points to avoid getting overtaken by others. But for the moment, I would say Brighton of that next 6 have the highest ceiling. Of the top 8, I think the 3 with the highest ceiling are Liverpool City and Arsenal. And the 3 with the lowest floor are United, Newcastle, and probably Chelsea. just because with Chelsea, they're so strangely run. And this manager we saw last season had a great start and then a collapse. And there is a possibility that they go through a really bad run this season. They've got a lot of young players. They don't have a settled defence. They don't have a goalkeeper that you could really hang your hat on. They don't have a goal scorer you could hang your hat on. They've still got a lot of variance in what we can expect from them. So I think those three have the lowest floor and the most likelihood of falling out of the top 8. And all we need is one of them to fall out for Brighton to jump into the top 8. Now, it will remain moving forward unless we get multiple seasons where Brighton, to be fair, have finished above Chelsea in multiple seasons. They finished above United last season, and this season? No, not the season before. And they could easily finish above Newcastle, who, with the injuries and the Eddie Howe factor, you just don't know. You know, Brighton, I think, are the team in the middle 6 that have the highest ceiling. And I would say Brentford probably have the lowest floor. Maybe Palace, but I would say Brentford. And then in that bottom 6, I think Forest clearly have the highest ceiling. The lowest floor is basically between the 3 teams currently bottom of the league. Now, Everton, if they could get their act together, potentially could have the highest ceiling. Like, talent for talent, there's not a ton between Everton and Forest. I like the Forest players more. There's certain areas that I look at certain Everton players and think, yeah, you're better than who Forest have in the same position. That's kind of how I view it, as an 8, a 6, and a 6. There's a lot more movement capability between the middle 6 and the bottom 6, obviously. Because Everton and Forest are very capable of potentially even getting in the top half. Forest look like they might do it this year. Everton, if they could get their act together, potentially could do it. And we saw last season when they got 48 points, before obviously they had points taken off them, that was only 1 point shy of 10th place. So Everton have a capability of getting top half. In terms of teams in that middle tier that could go down to go in the wrong direction, the only one I would be willing to say I think it's possible for is Brentford. And that's purely on the basis of, I look at them right now, they've got the 4th worst defence in the league. They've already lost 4 games, and only the bottom 5 have lost more. Now, there's a bunch of teams have lost 4 games. But with Brentford, the wins are where I would have a little bit of concern about sustainability. So if we look at Brentford's results this year, you start off with the win against Crystal Palace. You were outplayed for much of that game. And Palace had a goal wrongly disallowed. Then you played Southampton. That was a comfortable win, no issues at all. Then you played Wolves. Wolves were gifting you goals left, right, and centre. And then you played Ipswich, and they gifted you goals left, right, and centre. Now, the fact that Brentford took advantage of those gifts is a good thing for Brentford. It's not a good thing if they're relying on those goals. If they're relying on defensive mistakes. Because they don't come very often in this league. They just don't. They've had quite a few go in their favour thus far. There's also an injury factor with Brentford that we've seen over the last 2 years where it does concern me how frequently important players get hurt for them. But I don't think they're going to have any problems this season. Let's be clear on that. I think they're going to be fine. So that's basically it. I hope that answers the question. And I will be back after this break.
Bombas presents unsolicited gifting advice. Number 1, if they say not to get them anything, get them something. 2, underwear is a great gift, just not for your boss. And 3, those absurdly soft Bombas socks and slippers you've been eyeing for yourself, they'll love those. And the fact that for every item you purchase, another is donated to someone who needs it, they'll love that even more.
Go to bombas.com/Spotify and use code Spotify for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/Spotify, code Spotify.
In this ad for the Mobile One brand, I have 30 seconds to talk about driving, which might be what you're doing right now. Maybe you're in the car, you're free, you're in control, on an open road with an open calendar. Your mind is wandering, and you're going with it. Or maybe you're stuck at work, in meetings, or emails, or worse, meetings about emails. And if that's the case, there's only one question. Why? Mobile One, for the love of driving. Visit loveofdriving.us/radio to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Etsy.
Oh.
Hear that?
Okay. Thank you.
Etsy knows these aren't the sounds of holiday gifting. Well, not the ones you're hoping for. You want squeals of delight. Happy tears.
How did you?
And spontaneously written songs of joy.
I am so happy. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, the song needs a bit of work, but anyway, to get those reactions, make sure everyone on your list feels heard with handmade, handpicked, and designed gifts from small shops on Etsy. Gifts like personalized jewelry, custom artwork, cozy style items, vintage pieces, and home decor to celebrate all of your favorite people and their specific kind of special. For original gifts that say, I get you, Etsy has it.
Right, welcome back. So, to finish out today's show, I thought what I'd do is I'd tell you what to watch this weekend. So, let's start in Spain with La Liga. Valencia versus Real Madrid has been postponed, obviously, given the tragedy taking place in the Valencia region. So no game there. I think the games I would point to are Barcelona-Espanyol, just because it's a derby. Athletic Club against Real Betis, though, is the one that really jumps out to me. That is Sunday, an 8 p.m. kickoff. I think that's the most interesting game of the weekend in Spain. In Italy, Napoli versus Atalanta immediately catches the eye. That's 11:30 on Sunday. So a nice early one. Napoli obviously flying this season. Conte is doing great work, but a lovely contrast in managerial styles of play between him and Gasperini. So I would recommend that one. In the Bundesliga, I think Dortmund-Leipzig looks like a pretty good one on Saturday at 5:30. But tomorrow night, two of the best young managers in the world, Xabi Alonso and Bayer Leverkusen, against Sebastian Hoeneß and Stuttgart. That is definitely one to watch. If you're in any way a footballing hipster, I expect you to be glued to that one. It should be fascinating. In France, then, Lille versus Lyon is an 8 p.m. kickoff tomorrow night. That's the standout game in France this weekend. But I'm quite interested to see Saint-Etienne versus Strasbourg on Saturday night at 8 p.m. A couple of really interesting young players that might be worth the watch there. We'll jump to the Eredivisie and see what is what. The obvious one is the biggest. There's actually just two huge games this weekend. But the obvious one is Ajax versus PSV Eindhoven. It is a 5:45 kickoff on Saturday. But I do also think Feyenoord versus AZ Alkmaar at 8 p.m. on Saturday is an exciting one to watch too. That is the Arne Slot derby. In Scotland, we have a couple of games going ahead. There is not a full slate of games, but we do have St. Johnstone versus Hearts, St. Mirren versus Ross County, and Hibernian versus Dundee United. Of the league games, is probably the most interesting. More interesting, though, is the Scottish League Cup semi-final, which sees Celtic take on Aberdeen. That is 5:30 on Saturday. In the other semi-final, it's Motherwell versus Rangers. That is 3 p.m. on Sunday. Celtic and Aberdeen obviously played very recently, a 2-2 draw. Celtic were ahead and then threw it away because, what else would you be at? This one should be fun, though. This one should be fun. Celtic are in really good form. Aberdeen are in really good form. This is a game I think people will enjoy. Two teams that are unbeaten in the league, flying in the cup. Celtic obviously had a good result in Europe recently, away to Atalanta. I think Celtic Aberdeen is a good one to watch. In Portugal, the only one that's of real interest to me is Sporting versus Estrela. That's tomorrow at 8:15. I'm not going to watch it live, but I might watch it after, purely because of the Amber factor and what may or may not be happening with him. We'll talk about that next later on. In the Turkish league, Trabzonspor versus Fenerbahce at 4:30 on Sunday is the game. 4 p.m. on Sunday is the game that jumps out to me. And there is nothing in the Greek league that is of any real interest. But I will advise you, while it's in my mind, there's a brilliant article by Daniel Taylor on The Athletic today. So if you've got an Athletic subscription or you've got a way to get around the paywall, I highly recommend going and reading this article. It's about the owner of Nottingham Forest, who also owns Olympiacos. It's just incredible. So go and read that. And it's a very interesting view into how things work in Greek football. Outside of Europe, Brazilian Serie A, Corinthians versus Palmeiras, that's Monday night at 11 p.m. Fluminense Grêmio is kind of interesting. Botafogo Vasco da Gama is not till Wednesday, so that's well out in the future. 7 games left. 3 points separating Botafogo and Palmeiras. Palmeiras drawing with Fortaleza last time out, 2-2. Quite disappointing for them. But especially considering they were 1-up, got pegged back, went 2-1 up, and got pegged back again. They are chasing another league title, and it's looking like a tougher challenge for them this year. But if we think back to last year, Botafogo were clear at the top for a number of weeks. Not quite this late, I don't think, into the season. But they absolutely capitulated. So I'm curious to see if the same thing happens again. As everybody knows, I'm a huge fan of Abel Ferreira, the Palmeiras manager, who since going there, he obviously had worked in Europe with Braga and then PAOK in Greece. But since going to Palmeiras, he has just done incredible work. He won back-to-back Libertadores and then followed that up with back-to-back league titles. He's now chasing a 3rd league title in a row. In Argentina, I am going to advise... I actually don't know. What is of interest? Hurricane Gimnasia. Hurricane are brilliant. Like, they're playing such good football. So that might be the one to watch. Yeah, that might be the one to watch. Lanús against Boca Juniors is interesting as well. Those games start tonight, though. So if you're interested, you've got Sarmiento against Independiente and Estudiantes against Independiente River at 10 p.m., both games. Then there's also games kicking off at 12:15 UK time. Rosario Central against Barracas Central and Godoy Cruz against Atletico Tucumán. They're both at 12:15, so you could watch 2 games tonight if you're in the mood for a little bit of Argentine football. Then there are games tomorrow night, same times, 10 p.m. and 12:15 midnight. Actually, one of them is at 1 a.m. Argentinos Juniors against Vélez Sarsfield. That might be one to watch. And then there's a bunch of games Saturday and Sunday. So they spread them out really well, so you can watch most games if you want to. If you really wanted to binge some Argentinian football, that is available to you. That's going to do me for today. I'll be back with extra later on. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.